What's up guys, this is Demkeys and we are currently on day 688. It's been a while since I vlogged and honestly there's not been a whole lot of progress, but what little progress we do have, I want to show you that. Alright, so I've been working on this rocket launcher kind of thing. I'm going to play the game real quick. So this is the rocket launcher. It has, for the most part, it's supposed to have a 90-degree sort of motion, I guess range of motion. Yeah, it's supposed to have a 90-degree range of motion, but we might increase that. It doesn't necessarily have to be restricted to 90. And you can see this sort of green laser looking thing over here. It's basically a gizmo that I've added. This is just for debugging purposes. So whenever this rocket launcher sees the player or detects the player, it's going to fire. It also has a fire rate, so it won't constantly fire every frame. It's going to fire at fixed intervals. And of course the player can also attack this rocket launcher, and as you can see there's a particle system being spawned here each time. This is just to show damage being done to the rocket launcher. Another thing to notice is the player actually gets hurt now when the player is hit by any sort of projectile or by the enemy or whatever. When the player is attacked, basically the player does move and the player also takes damage. When I say move, I mean sort of a knockback kind of motion. And I also implemented this simple functionality that temporarily immobilizes the player. So there isn't a sort of conflict going on where the player is getting pushed back, but at the same time, the player is receiving input and moving forward. So let me see if I can show you that. Okay, so I've moved the ledge, and now you'll notice when the player gets hit, the player moves back, but I'm trying to move forward and the player doesn't move forward. This is until the immobilized period is over, which is probably 0.3 or 0.5 seconds. It's not supposed to be a whole lot. It's just supposed to be a really short period. And the same thing happens when the player has done any sort of attack. So something like this. It's hard to notice the immobilized period here, but it's there. Another thing is this crate. The crate can be attacked and it also gets destroyed eventually. All of this is still work in progress. It's not complete. The rocket launcher, this is not at all a proper representation of what the rocket launcher will look like. Glow is currently working on Glow is currently working on a concept for what the rocket launcher is supposed to look like. Once he's done with the concept, then we'll move forward from there. And yeah, once the sprite is ready, I'll replace this with whatever the original sprite is or whatever design we come up with. I'm also planning to implement a feature where the player can't collide with this rocket launcher. Instead of a collider, well, there's going to be a collider, but I'm going to make it a trigger. So the player goes through it, and to avoid the actual going through kind of thing, I'm going to set it up so that the player gets an electric shock whenever the player enters that trigger. I still have to work on that functionality, but yeah, that's coming soon as well. Then there's also these spikes. Now, generally the player is supposed to get a lot of damage when the player hits these spikes. The whole point is to discourage the player from ever hitting these spikes, but currently I haven't set the damage to a very high amount because we're just debugging. But yeah, when the player hits the spikes, the player gets a sort of knockback. And even with this, there's a small immobilized period. During that period, the player won't get more damage. So basically, let's say the player falls right in between the spikes. You'll notice there's a delay between each time that the player gets the knockback. Each time you see the knockback, that is basically when the player is taking damage. Now, eventually I'm planning to add this sort of blinking effect where the player's mesh sort of blinks whenever the player gets attacked or whenever the player takes damage. So yeah, that's coming in the future as well. Another thing I've been working on is ledge hang functionality. I don't remember if I've shown this in any of the previous vlogs or not. I don't think I have, but yeah. There's ledge hanging functionality. So if the player is at the edge of a ledge or a platform, then the player will be able to hang on its edge. And this right here represents a ladder. So the player can climb up and down on it. As you can see, we don't really have the animations in yet for ladder climbing. In fact, it's not even going to be a ladder. I think at some point we changed it to a pipe. So yeah, it's not going to be a ladder, it's a pipe. And once the player reaches to the top of the pipe, there's going to be an edge of some sort of platform. So the player automatically hangs, and then the player can jump up onto the platform or jump down and, you know. Okay, what's up guys? This is Demkeys and we are currently on day 716. I have a couple of things to show you. We now have teleporters in the game. That's these game objects right here. Alright, so the basic idea here is that we have three kinds of teleporters. An in teleporter, which is a teleporter that you can only go into. An out teleporter that you can only come out from. And an in-out teleporter, which is basically a two-way teleporter, so you can go in and out of it. So this right here is an in teleporter. We know that because the in arrow is green and the out arrow is red. So if we go into this teleporter and hit the interact key, as you can see, we have been teleported. Now this right here is a two-way teleporter. We know this because, well, both the arrows are green. And if we use this teleporter, now we get teleported to a different location. Alright, so next I'm going to explain the UI and inventory. So let's start with the inventory. Basically, we redesigned the inventory because we realized that we were overcomplicating things, and based on the changes that we made to the player design, many of the items that were there in the inventory previously, they weren't really required anymore. So I redesigned the inventory and there is no inventory window anymore. The inventory items are just shown in the HUD, which is right here. So here are the items. Basically, there are two types of items that the player can collect, a consumable and a collectible. A consumable item will be collected, but it won't be stored. It'll be consumed instantly. A collectible item will be collected and then stored in the inventory. These right here are area keys. There'll only be 5 area keys in any given area that the player is in. This right here shows how much scrap metal the player has, and this right here shows how many boss fragments the player has collected. And here you have the HP bar for D, the stamina bar, and the adrenaline bar, which are both empty right now. And you have the energy bar for APv1 as well. I'm not going to show any of these bars in action right now. I'm just going to show the rest of the HUD elements in action. So currently I have these 5 squares over here. I'm probably just going to use enlarged versions of these sprites. But for now I'm using placeholder graphics here. Each of these are keys of a certain color. Currently, I'm not sure if it's very evident or not, but these items right here, they have sort of a dullness to them, which is basically showing that these items have not been collected yet. So if I collect the green area key, now you can see the green item here has lit up. The green area key has lit up. So this basically means that the player currently has the green area key in the inventory. If I go over blue, now blue lights up, red, red, yellow, yellow, and magenta or purple, whatever the color is, that lights up as well when I pick up that particular key. So that's it for area keys. Next, I'm going to show you collection of scrap metal. So scrap metal is basically a sort of currency that the player is going to use mostly for upgrading APv1. In fact, at the moment, as it stands, it's only for upgrading APv1, but I don't know in the future if we're going to actually add some other use for it or not. But currently, as it stands, scrap metal is for upgrading APv1 stats. So we have different kinds of scrap metal. Again, over here also I'm using placeholder graphics. Some of these are 1 scrap metal, some of these are 5, and some of them are different numbers. I don't remember what numbers I put up, but yeah, we are able to assign multiple numbers. So one item is not necessarily only 1 scrap metal. It can be 1, it can be 10, 50, 100, whatever. So if I collect this, now you can see 5 scrap metal has been added here. If I collect this, now there's 5 more, so that makes it 10, then 15, and then 20. Alright, so I just made some changes, and now some of these scrap metal items give you 5, and some of them give you 10. So this first one, for example, now directly gives you 10, and the second one gives you 5, the next one gives 5 as well, and the very last one gives you 10. Alright, next we have boss fragments. So boss fragments are basically all the fragments that you have to collect throughout the level in order to be able to fight the final boss, because you're not going to be able to unlock the door that you have to unlock in order to fight the final boss if you don't have all 4 boss fragments. So again, over here I'm using placeholder graphics, and each of these boss fragments has a certain meaning. One is the first one is the second one is the third, and one is the fourth. So for example, if I collect this, you can see this is the first one, This is the second, third, and fourth. So now I've switched the order a little bit. First you collect the third one. This is the second one. This is the first one. And this is the fourth one. Alright, so one last thing I forgot to show you is the power-ups. The consumable items that the player can collect that will be consumed immediately. So as an example, I've reduced the HP of D, and this right here is an HP power-up. So if I collect it, you can see the HP increases. Again, even with this, I'm using placeholder graphics. Eventually, they're going to have the actual graphics on them. So this is pretty much all I have to show you right now. Next, I'm planning to work on the companion, that is APv1. I'm planning to work on the character controller for APv1. And also, I'm probably going to work on different types of doors, area doors that require area keys, and also doors that don't require any sort of key.